Hello, I'm Stephen Missick, and welcome to this episode of Voice of the Word. This episode is in memoriam to Mar Aprem, or George Mooken of India, who is the Bishop of India in southern India in Kerala. And I went to India, I visited with him. He was a great man. I want to reflect on his life a little bit and how I knew him in this episode.
Jesus was an Aramaic-speaking Jew of the Middle East, and the Assyrians are Aramaic-speaking Christians in the Middle East who have endured persecution for over 1,000 years. Join Voice of the Word Aramaic Bible teacher, artist, and author Stephen Missick as he examines the Bible through the ancient languages, peoples, lands, cultures, and times in which it was first revealed. Research the Scriptures, rescue persecuted Christians, and restore the Church to its Semitic roots. And now, Voice of the Word.
Hello, I'm Dr. Missick, and welcome to this episode of Voice of the Word. Today we received some very bad news that Mar Aprem Mooken, the Bishop of India, of the Assyrian Church of the East, passed away. This episode is going to be in memoriam of him, and I want to talk about him and his life's achievements and my experiences of meeting with him when I was in India. One of my interests is in the lives of the 12 apostles. I have my book, Abdius of Babylon, and of course the film project I worked on, the St. Jude Thaddeus documentary and the Thaddeus film. So I wanted to go to India to retrace the steps of the Apostle Thomas. And I'd been to India before, but I went to central India. And I'd also been in contact with Mar Aprem before. And this time, it's going to be a very serious trip. The idea was for me to retrace the steps of the Apostle Thomas. And I've done research on the Assyrian Church in India for the Journal of Assyrian Academic Studies. I did. The article is titled Mar Thoma, which is the Aramaic way of saying St. Thomas, the Assyrian Church in India. So Mar Awa let Mar Aprem know I was coming, and he was a very gracious host, and I was able to spend time with him, and I was able to visit most of the sites that in Kerala. There's 7 churches founded by St. Thomas, and there's 2 churches they call half churches that are associated with St. Thomas, but they don't have the status of churches. So I want to show some videos of me and Mar Aprem. But this is a very learned man. He's also very kind and affable, gracious, intelligent, witty. And, recently there's been a lot of Assyrians who have been able to achieve some kind of notoriety or fame of sorts, like Sam Shamoun, the Assyrian Encyclopedia, in his apologetics and his polemics against Islam. You have Patrick Bet David. He's been doing all these interviews, podcasts are very successful. And of course, we also have Mar Emmanuel. So I'm glad that these people are, having an effect and creating interest and knowledge about the Assyrian people, which a lot of people don't have. But we shouldn't allow these people to eclipse the great luminosity of Mar Aprem, George Mooken, Mar Aprem Mooken, because this man for decades has been a scholar. He's written several books, which I have. And he's written books on all kinds of different topics. History, theology, the history of the Assyrian people, even some collections of humorous stories. So my trip to India, I didn't get to see all the sites associated with Thomas, but it was a very successful trip, and he was able to facilitate that. And I met Father George over there through his help. Mar Aprem, and I was able to have a very successful, productive trip over there and visit a lot of the sites associated with St. Thomas. Very wonderful experience. Just doing the pilgrimage. I think there's a value to pilgrimage. And one of the things that's important about the Assyrian Church of the East, I've talked about this before, is how, when people think of Christianity, they think of, the Roman Catholic, the Protestant churches, maybe Eastern Orthodox, and the Church of the East, the Aramaic Church, and the churches of Africa, like the Coptic and Ethiopian churches, are often overlooked, and yet the contributions they've made in their ancient forms of Christianity, and they're very important in many different ways. So it's really a wonderful experience for me to be able to retrace the steps of St. Thomas the Apostle, who is the founder you have Mar Thoma, St. Thomas, Mar Addai, St. Thaddeus, and then Mar Mari, the three founders of the Assyrian Church of the East. And they went to Edessa, and then from there Thomas went through Parthia into India. And if you go to Kerala, India today, about 20% of the population is Christian, and they belong to the Aramaic, the Syriac Christian heritage. And in the city of Trisur, there's different denominations now, but that area is a kind of a stronghold of the Assyrian Church of the East. Originally, all of those churches, for the most part, were part of the Assyrian Church of the East. But what happened is Catholic explorers came to southern India, and they tried to, they arrested priests and burned books and brought in the Holy Office of the Inquisition. They kind of wore out their welcome. So you had this incident, they call it the Crooked Cross Oath, where the Christians got together of India and said, we don't want to be with these European explorers imposing these hardships on us. We just want to be free. A Syrian Orthodox priest just happened to arrive, and they made him their bishop. So because of the influence of European explorers, the Assyrians lost a lot of their churches, but they're able to keep this important community in Trisur. And a lot of the communities became Catholic Syriac Rite churches, or they became Syrian Orthodox. But before the arrival of the European explorers, that whole region, for the most part, like I said, you had the Jacobites and the Syrian Orthodox and other sects, but it was majority Church of the East. So I want to show some videos about Mar Aprem. You can see him officiating the Holy Qurbana, the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, and this service was in Aramaic, but I also want to show some interactions between him and I. And it's very distressing when the European explorers arrived in India. They burnt entire libraries of books. These must be heretical, so they thought, and they burned a lot of books. But some books were preserved, and it was really an amazing experience for Mar Aprem to show me this collection of a climate-controlled area where certain books were able to escape the flames and be preserved, which is really good for him to be very hospitable and kind and receptive to me and to help me on my adventure in India. And I really appreciate this man. It's a sad passing, but I could tell, because I've been keeping up with him, and I saw a photograph of him recently, and he's diabetic and he had other health problems, and I'm sorry to see him go. This is a sad day of a good man who really made a lot of important contributions for the Assyrian Church. And like I said, with the amount of books he read, which he wrote, which I'm going to show you here. But it's just, we need to just acknowledge the passing of this great man. And it's very sad, but like I said, now he's entered into his eternal rest, and the suffering of his body, he's not experiencing that anymore. So now he has joy and peace in the presence of our Lord. But I think that we should acknowledge this great man and his contribution. So he had this, he's very intellectual, very intelligent, but he had a good heart. He's a very kind-hearted, good person as well. So this is really a very great loss for the Assyrian people, and this man made a lot of great contributions to the Assyrian Church, and for me, he's going to be greatly missed, and I wish I was able to see him one more time and go back to India and finish the quest and see him. But it's sad. But I am, I'm glad I had the honor to meet him, and now he's in heaven, and thank God for him. Now, I want to do something else in this episode where I'm going to show a few pictures. I'm going to show some videos from India, but I want to show a photograph because I went on these adventures, and what I'm doing is I'm collecting research, and I need to take this research and put it out there. So I'm going to talk about this in a later episode. Since Mar Aprem passed away, I want this program to be in remembrance of him, to honor his sacred memory. But in a forthcoming episode, we're going to talk about the traditions of St. Thomas in India. And a lot of the story of St. Thomas in India is written about by the early church fathers, but you have in Aramaic, we have the Acts of Thomas, which tells the story of Thomas in India. And scholars dispute it. Is it based on a true story? Is it just a legend that developed? I think there are reasons for believing that Thomas did indeed go to India. But there's been a lot of, there's a book written by Sean McDowell recently called The Fate of the Apostles. He just came up with a revised edition. And like I said, there's a lot of people who believe that the stories of Thomas in India are historical. Other people dispute that. But one of the things that Sean McDowell was talking about is like we have the Acts of Thomas, we have writings of the early church fathers referring to Thomas's missionary journeys in India. But we also have oral tradition in India, the stories they tell with folk songs like they call the Thoma Rambam and others. I'm going to talk about this later, but I want to show a few photographs of Kerala. So you see Mar Aprem, but you also see the land that you know, his homeland, the land of India, and the places where Thomas, according to tradition, founded the church there. But I want to show this one photograph. I went to a lot of these different churches and places where Thomas, it's like a church that Thomas founded. And there's this mural, which I took a photograph of, and it shows pictures from the life of St. Thomas, and it's written in the language they speak there, which is Malayalam, which is a Dravidian language. And anyway, I had a St. Thomas Christian translate it for me. And I want to talk about what these, in another episode, I want to talk about what's going on in these stories that the St. Thomas Christians are telling. So let's just pray for our Indian brothers and sisters, especially in Kerala, as they mourn the passing of this great, like he's an Assyrian luminary, made a lot of very significant and important contributions to the Assyrian church. And we should acknowledge that, acknowledge his passing. And like I said, I'm happy in the sense that he's not suffering in his body and he's entered into his eternal rest. But this is such a good man, it's such a blessing. He's going to be greatly missed by many, including myself. These are all the books you wrote.
All the books I have written.
From your first book all the way down to...
Then I look. Then that inspired me to write more.
That's good.
I have completed 75 books.
75 books, that's...
76 I am writing. Russia and England. Perhaps I should request you once to write a small forward to one of my books.
1894. It's a
No,
letter.
1904.
1904.
Yeah. 1904. That is 112 years ago. Buddha. Yeah.
And so is Alan.
This is in the bishop.
This is the patriarch over here. So this is...
prayer room, Mar is built. And the first portion is now.
ملخا مغدرتا مريم مغدر تعجبتا تدخل الآت دمرتا الشمل باشق لوا بدخات الرخصي خوا هذا كل المحيطة ناشو تقدر لموتا أو دقوا بعض غيبوتا بدخبت على عودا بابا خب لا مدرينا بشمشي خاقي لالا طيطة آدم طلالا رايا طواقي
Research, rescue, and restore. Help Voice of the Word and Aramaic Christian Ministries mission research the ancient languages, peoples, lands, cultures, and times of the Bible. Rescue persecuted Assyrian Christians in the Middle East and restore Christianity to its original Semitic roots. For Stephen Missick's books, online giving, and other resources from Aramaic Christian Ministries, visit www.stephenmissick.com. Join us next time on Voice of the Word as we research the Scriptures, rescue persecuted Christians, and restore the Church to its Semitic roots.